and welcome to another episode of the Montarctica podcast. Today I got a special guest, Tawney. He's the CEO of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. You're based out of Missoula, aren't you, Lan?
I am. Beautiful Missoula, Montana.
Yeah, cool place over there for sure. Anyway, Land is a big advocate for public lands and outdoors hunting and that kind of thing. Land, do you want to kind of tell us what your background is and kind of get into what Backcountry Hunters and Anglers is?
Yeah, I'll give you like the short little bios. So 5th generation Montanan, born and raised here, had the great opportunities to grow up hunting and fishing on public lands and public waters here in Montana. We have such a plethora of opportunities. I think I told somebody this weekend, it's like an embarrassment of riches that you can hardly scratch the surface of. So I feel lucky for that. Went to school, got a wildlife biology degree. Fresh out of school, started volunteering for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. Worked for them for about 3.5 years, and went to work for the National Wildlife Federation for about 8 years, and then took over at BHA about 7 years ago. And Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, what we try to make sure every single day is that you have access to public lands and waters, and then the fish and wildlife habitat when you get there.
Yeah. And
we do that from local projects on the ground, as far as cleanups to working with state legislatures and fish and game agencies, all the way out to Washington, D.C. And really, the difference probably between us and all the other organizations is really this advocacy piece. And, when we were first formed around a campfire in 2004, kind of the folks that were around that campfire looked at all the sportsman's groups like Ducks Unlimited, the Elk Foundation, Pheasants Forever, all doing amazing work, but nobody was really focused on public lands and public waters. And so that was really the impetus for our organization. And, fast forward to now, we've got 40,000 plus members. We've got chapters in 48 out of the 50 states. The only states we don't have right now are Hawaii and Delaware. I have volunteered to go to Hawaii to try to start a chapter there. And so far during COVID, that's probably not going to happen. And then we've got 2 Canadian provinces that we have chapters in, and then 1 territory. So the idea continues to grow, and it's an awesome group of people to be a part of. Whether that's if you're a brand new hunter or somebody that's very seasoned, we're welcoming to everybody.
Was it just you and some buddies that started it, or how'd that?
No, I didn't actually start it. I was an early adopter. I became a member pretty early on, but it was some folks that were really in the conservation community that were sitting around a fire late at night. Lore has it that there was a little bit of whiskey involved, and they really started looking again at this playing field, and they said, let's start something. And so I had a couple of friends around that campfire, and they called me and said, would you like to be a member? I said, absolutely. But really, until I took over 7 years ago, it was all volunteer driven. There was a couple part-time staff. I was the first full-time staff, and we had 1,000 members, I think, at that time. So think about 7 years ago and to where we are now with 40,000 plus. It's because I think public lands and waters resonates with anybody. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter who your parents are. It doesn't matter kind of what color you are. And really, it doesn't matter in the country. You can always find some public lands or public waters somewhere. And so I think it's been a universal kind of, rallying cry. And that's one of the reasons why we've grown so fast.
Yeah. And obviously you're a hunter, fisherman too. Do you got any, what's your favorite kind of game to hunt?
Oh man. So it's super tough, especially living here in Montana, right? Like we have this plethora of things to do.
Exactly.
I think, and this is weird coming from Montana because we're not really a hot zone for waterfowl. But I grew up, some of my favorite memories growing up were going with my dad to, these duck spots early in the morning and watching these ducks erupt from there, and then watching the dogs work. And and that was way before I could pull the trigger, And so I think that waterfowl piece to me, I got a young lab, she's 3. And I would say if I had to give everything up and only could hunt one thing, it might be labs, and all my elk hunting buddies and deer hunting buddies are probably going to chastise me. But, I think one of the things I love about ducks is watching the marsh wake up in the morning, but then I would also say that I can go out for a couple hours and then work for the rest of the day, or I can go out in the evening, or, it's for my lifestyle right now, particularly with work and young kids, it's the most conducive. And so I plan on this fall doing a bunch of duck hunting, but I've also got an elk tag, like a cow elk tag. I got a doe tag, got an antelope tag, and so we'll be hunting them all. We'll be hunting them all for sure.
I struck out on the elk tag this year for the breaks south of me, but
okay.
I live in Malta is where I'm from. I don't know if you knew that.
Awesome. I know where you are.
Yeah. Have you ever duck hunted over here or anything?
I've not. I've hunted sharptails and sage grouse up on up in the like on the refuge,
Yeah.
and then a little bit west of there. So I've bird hunted all over in there, but I've not like hunted big game over there.
Yeah.
It's the breaks are such a. I mean, for those that don't know, man, come on, like they're just such a beautiful place. And I actually had a paddlefish tag this year.
Oh, nice.
And did that up in the upper Missouri, kind of Missouri Breaks National Monument. And ended up catching this gigantic freaking prehistoric beast. It was 93.5 pounds. And
I saw that on your Instagram.
Dude, it was awesome. But I think, I mean, it was rad to hook into that fish, but it was also fun to hang out in that country. You know, when you come off those ridges and you dive into the river, like there's these riparian zones with cottonwoods and all those breaks in between, man. It's just, so you live in great country, and you know that, but you know, and there's big mule deer around, and I mean, you live in some pretty cool place.
I tell you one thing, you want to freak yourself out about the breaks. I was listening this, I don't know, a year or two ago, and I'm driving south. I'm heading to Billings, and just like cresting over the breaks, and I'm listening to Rogan's podcast with Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock, and they're talking about how all this water flowed through the breaks, and now how this got it carved out and all this. And right then, a great big meteor shoots through the sky right in front of me.
No.
Talking about all these meteors hitting Earth and stuff. I'm telling you, I about lost it right there. I'm like, this is the eeriest thing I've ever seen. And I mean, it was right when they were talking about the Missouri breaks and everything, and it just all lined up. But yeah, it's awesome. I've been going out there since I was a little kid. You know, I mean, we go out like fourchette and even water sports. I learned to kneeboard out there.
Cool.
I got a lot of friends that own land out south there too. You know, and this is where I've lived my whole life pretty much. I've moved away and moved back just because I love Malta so much. But yeah, it's
awesome. Well, it's awesome. And you bring up Joe Rogan, right? Isn't like that was like the first time he hunted was mule deer in the Missouri breaks, and like you know now he's this huge advocate for hunting and kind of killing your own meat and how sustainable that is. And but he fell in love with the breaks, right? Like so, like you know, again, you live in an amazing country, and I feel lucky to go there, but I need to explore it more.
Yeah, we got, like I said, he must have got lucky with the place he went the first time just to hook on hunting so hard because, I mean, well, he went with some good guys anyway, but totally. I knew pretty much right where they were, and it is a good spot to hunt for sure. But as far as like everything around, that's the nice thing about where I'm at in Malta, which I hate to let the secret out. You know, I mean, we got Milk River land too, which you got tons of whitetail, and then you get south, or even north, you got lots of mule deer country too. And I mean, good fishing, just about everything you want up here. If you're an outdoorsman, it's a great place to live. But
yeah, you talk about the milk, and I haven't done this yet, but we've had quite a few members that have done this, where they float the milk and then hunt those islands for whitetails and pheasants.
Oh yeah.
And again, we're probably giving up too many secrets here. The nice thing is though, is that it's in the middle of nowhere, so like, you got to work to get there, right? And, which is part of the cool thing about I think where you live is that you got to put in some work no matter what.
I have a cabin on the Milk River that got just under a couple acres there, but it's all riverfront and stuff. It's a pretty fun place. Cool. They, like you said, as far as people hard to get here, it seems like it's getting less and less hard every year because anytime I go out, you do see more and more out-of-state tags and stuff, as you're out there. But one thing that's good about it, so other than that little chunk of land, I don't own a farm or a ranch or anything. I lived right in town pretty much my whole life. But I bartend on the weekends to get away from my normal job that I work from home here. And the hunting season is by far the best time of our year. As hunters come in and they spend a lot of money. And even like my mom works at one of the restaurants next door to where I bartend, and same there. Hunting season is where they make their bread really from out-of-staters and stuff. So, as much as when you're out there with a rifle and you're hunting and you're running into all these out-of-state tags and stuff, it can be frustrating then, but then you come back into town, and if you see the town booming at that time, it's it's kind of a give and take that way. But
yeah, I've heard people describe that as like especially rural Montana, but probably anywhere in the United States, is really like Christmas, that lasts for like, we're lucky we have such a long, prosperous, like big game season in particular, but you think about bird season, it's very long as well. But it's like Christmas for that entire time, right? Because you have all these people in flux here. And I get you on that piece about running into people. And I think that's like, we just talked about working hard, and like, it's like, as long as you're kind of like trying to get away from people, usually you can, right?
Yeah.
And I think as, more and more people have OnX, or they're listening to your podcast or somebody else's, like, they get keyed in on areas that are pretty special.
Exactly.
But we can all figure out, I think, how to get away from those things.
And you mentioned OnX, that's definitely done wonders too, as far as, I mean, even not only public land hunting, but especially around here when you know all the landowners and stuff, and you're out somewhere and you go, oh man, this is so-and-so's land. We do have permission here, but next door, it's nice to have that app now, where back in the day you would just hoped you knew exactly where you were,
Yeah. No, it's been I would say that's been one of the biggest game changers as far as technology, like, in the recent years. And I use it, like, I hunt just north of Missoula. God, I'm giving away stuff. I just hunt north of Missoula up on like 9 pipes for waterfowl.
Yeah.
And some upland birds as well. And I use that app like all the time, because like the tribe up there is buying land all the time, which is open to hunters. And so there's stuff that looks like totally private. It doesn't have any signs or anything on it. But with that app, like, I can tell where I am, which is the big part. And then also like that it's open to me. So I use it all the time, man.
And we didn't have that then, but we were using just GPS here. I don't know, probably 6-7 years ago, my buddy drew a moose tag for south of Dillon over there.
Whoa, cool.
And like, man, it was a successful hunt, but talk about some serious hiking to get to it, and OnX would have been huge then to know exactly where you're at and stuff. I mean, we were just big old handheld ones, that
right
back then, but it was fun. It was a good hunt. And, but you can really realize what kind of rugged country you can get into in Montana too.
Totally. Yeah. It's, I go to the Bob Marshall a lot, and just talking to my cousin, there's a spot, we go down to the confluence of these two creeks, and then we can do that for the horses so they can have water. But man, there's this ridge that we have to hike up to all the time. And I'm like, dude, let's stop like doing this, like 2,000 feet of elevation every day, right? Like, let's like have base camp, and then let's get up to this top. And like the biggest limiting factor there is going to be water. But no, we got big country here in Montana, and it's definitely a challenge all the time when you're out there.
Well, so do you guide also, or do you just go with friends when you hunt? Is that?
No, I just go with friends. I mean, I've gone on guided fishing trips before, and I'm trying to think like maybe 1 or 2 guided hunts in my life. But the majority of that's just with friends, man. And you grew up here, I grew up here. Like, we have so many opportunities, and when I travel across the country and go meet with members, sometimes I wish I wasn't married and had kids, because like I'd have so many more opportunities. But usually, when we go someplace, it's just like, you get to go out and meet somebody, down in Oklahoma, and we'll go do something, or somebody over in South Carolina, North Carolina, whatever it is. People are pretty welcoming. So I feel very lucky to be doing what I'm doing, and have just people that know their place that, are willing to take me out.
How many kids do you have now?
I got 2. I got a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, 12-year-old daughter, 9-year-old son. Both are super into fishing. Daughter could have, we have that apprentice program here in Montana, and she could have hunted when she was 10. Wanted to get her on birds first, and like even like a 410 was just too big for her. And she's just kind of, I mean, she's tall, but she's really skinny, and so like it's just too much. And so she hasn't hunted yet, but she is taking hunter safety this year, which is all online, which is interesting. And then no kind of field day, which I
they're
think
not doing the field day this year, huh?
No, because of COVID.
My son's already been through what they're trying to do. And
how old is he?
He's 13. He just got his first elk last year, actually.
Oh, dude, how rad is that? That's so awesome.
Great, man. And you wouldn't believe how pumped he is as far as filling the freezer full of meat, and then when we're eating his elk steaks, oh man, just the joy on his face. He went out. He actually went out with his grandpa and got that one. His grandpa's pretty avid bow hunter too, but he got in on that apprenticeship program and got in. Cool. And he actually he drew one again this year too. So hopefully
that's awesome, dude.
I know. Yeah.
And I think like the best part of like that. I mean, obviously it's great that he killed this elk, and but that the smile on his face when you guys are eating his elk, like the way he said that, like his elk, right? Like he's providing for the family. And what a great thing to learn as a 12, 13-year-old, right? Like how cool is that?
Well, and it's pretty easy for us, that live in Montana to say, man, elk steaks are great. I mean, I live in right in the middle of the best beef country too. You know, you can
True,
get one of
true.
the best rib steaks you've ever had. But I honestly, I mean, I like them both, but I love eating elk steaks, especially like as a breakfast steak. You know, for people who haven't tried it and they think that this, I mean, you get any anti-hunters or anything like that, how the heck do you think they get your meat at the store? You know, I mean,
Yep.
it
Totally.
either came through a feedlot or you went out and found it yourself. And I've always
Well,
kind
and
of that way that
you have like this connection to the land too, right? No matter wherever you kill that animal, like when you're eating that, like when your son is eating his elk, right? Again,
oh yeah,
like he knows where he was, right? And he has his connection to that place, and he has connection to that animal. And like, you know, and I'm not, I mean, again, I eat beef steaks. Like, you know, again, we live in a great place. You know, the Blackfoot Valley has a lot of great beef that, you know, just close to town here. And, but it's not, I don't have that intimate connection with that meat, you know? And exactly. I think that's such a special.
Oh, did we lose it?
Yeah, sorry about that. My daughter is, she's out right now and she just tried to call me. She's up at the lake somewhere. Sorry about that.
If you got to answer, pause it or something.
No. Like she can call mom. But yeah, I mean, it's that connection to food, man. I think it's just such an important thing. And a lot of people, I think that's one of the reasons why BHA has grown so fast too, right? Like food is such an important thing. And, you know, you and I are lucky to grow up in Montana, be immersed in like hunting and fishing. But there's all these like late 20s, early 30 somethings that like are like, wow, I bought my vegetables at the local farmer's market. Now I'm growing my own garden, and man, I want to get my own meat. And they're like, I don't really know how to do it. And so like we're helping do that a little bit, and really provide them opportunities. And so then like you see them and how that meat, like I mean, you've grown up with it, so it means something to us. But like if you're like late 20s, early 30s, and you're eating your first wild game that you killed, it's just like your son, right? It's just like this crazy thing, and there could be nothing more healthy than this wild game, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I tell people all the time, like if you eat elk steak and eggs for breakfast, you're packed full of energy for the rest of the day. I mean, you're
one of the things you're living like a king, but you're also eating really good food, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yep. So do you have any? You got any favorite game to eat, or I mean, are you a big fan of a duck or something? I mean, like you said that.
Duck. I figured out like probably 15, 20 different ways to cook duck, which I'm super excited about. I've shot moose, elk, antelope, whitetails, mule deers, bighorn sheep. I would say out of all those, bighorn sheep is probably my favorite, and it's got like a little bit of a sweet taste to it. I've shot a ewe and a ram now, and man, you don't get that eat it very often either, right? And so I think that is like there's kind of like this a novelty of it, I guess, a little bit too. But that sweet meat, man, like sheep meat is absolutely delicious. And so after I killed my ram 3 years ago, I can't put in for another 7 years, right? Like luckily here in Montana, that's not a lifetime tag, and maybe I'll be fit enough to hunt them again if I get a tag. But I can apply for a ewe right away. And so while I would waste points if I did that, I'm like, man, I just want to eat that meat again. So I didn't get it this year or last year, but I'll keep applying for that ewe until I can start applying for a ram again.
Where'd you go hunt bighorn?
Just east of town up Rock Creek.
Oh, okay.
So Rock Creek, famous fly fishing, stream. I've always fished up there, never hunted really. And then I got this tag, and it's super steep. And then you get up into these like plateaus, and those sheep, it was so fun to chase around. It took me like 18 days to kill that thing.
Wow.
Not in a row, but 18 days. But man, it was cool country, great species to hunt, and then ultimately just delicious to eat.
The tag for bighorn sheep here in the breaks is a really coveted one, because there's been plenty of times I've been out there and I've never actually got a tag, but I mean, you can get within 20 yards of a bighorn pretty easy out there, given the right day. But I've definitely seen some huge ones taken out of there for sure.
Yeah, I think there's much bigger ones in the breaks up Rock Creek. Rock Creek got that pneumonia too.
Oh, really?
I think it was like 9 years ago now. And so like when I got my tag, they were just starting to come back up. And so I didn't shoot a huge ram. which I'm not really that concerned about, to be totally honest. Like, you know, it was a great experience. Shot a, you know, a good representative of the species, and then, and again, the food was just, man, I'm salivating right now, even like remembering how, you know.
Well, that's you know, I mean, everybody wants that huge bowl of elk and stuff. I'm in the point. I'm happy to fill the freezer most of the time. You know, if it's if you come home and you got elk meat for the next 6 months, you know, that's the best part about the whole thing. But
it's a pretty good payoff, right?
Yeah. So you got any good hunting stories that I've had a couple like this that at the time it wasn't the greatest experience, but now you can sit back around a campfire and go, like, now you treasure that experience. You know, you got stuck somewhere or got nasty weather or something that.
Yeah, you know, like I would say that's one of the things I love about waterfowl hunting, you know, is like you get that nasty, you're on the water, huge storm comes in, sleet's going sideways, you know, it's like sub-zero water or sub-zero weather, like you're just like, it's nasty, right? And like you just have to embrace it, you know, and it's kind of like, I think it's like bring it on kind of, you know, like but I would say I'd go back to that sheep hunt, man, like that first week I was hunting, it rained the entire week. Only saw a couple animals, you know, a couple sheep, no big rams at all. And it was like trying, and I was all by myself, and I got my little teepee, you know, my stove in there, so I'm getting warm at night. And I was reading this End of the World book. And as I'm reading it, like I get to the end and like this family just like comes together, and I'm like, oh, I was like just missing my wife and my kids more than I've probably missed them in a long time.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I'm out, you know, it's like been a week, you know, I think I left on a Saturday. I had one more day, and I was just like, man, I got more of this season, but like, I need to go see my family. So pack up all my stuff. It's super wet. Drive down this like long dirt road. I'm like 26 miles up like Rock Creek. And as I come out and finally get cell phone coverage, I try to call my wife, and I can't get a hold of her. Like you know, and so I'm going down the road, and there's this little place in Clinton that's got fried chicken. You know, I'm like, you know, fried chicken is like maybe some like soul food for you, like a little bit, right? And
sure.
so I'm pulling off the interstate to go into Clinton, and I go to call my wife again, and it's dark out, and I'm looking at my phone, get distracted because it's so bright, and like it's been raining all week, and so the shoulder's wet, and I ended up drifting a little bit. And then overcorrecting, you know, I mean, you grew up in Montana, like we're used to like screwing around and like, you know, washboards and like going sideways in trucks. Like I know how to deal with like sliding, but I overcorrected just out of dumbness and rolled my truck twice and totaled it. Like gun was passenger side with me, out of its case. Like, thank God it didn't hit me in the face, but like, so that was like traumatic, you know. It was like a yard sale with my shit everywhere. You know, you had like coolers and like dry boxes. And so like I recovered, well, I get done with that. And it's like a week before I go hunting again, and I can't sleep, dude. I'm hearing like crashes, like, you know, like that crunch, like the crunch of the glass in particular, and like the quietness, and then the crunch, and the quietness, and the crunch again. And I can't sleep. And I was like, you know, my body's kind of messed up a little bit. I'm just not feeling great. And I was like, man, I gotta go. This is like a once in a lifetime, not, you know, maybe not once in a lifetime, but potentially.
But yeah,
like, I gotta go. So I go back up Rock Creek and got up in the woods and set up my teepee. And I slept like for the first time that night in the woods. I don't know if it was like the stillness or the fresh air or whatever it was, but I slept like my body kind of felt better that next morning. Yeah. And again, I didn't kill that sheep till later, but like that was like, it was pretty eye-opening to me, like on what like the woods mean to you mentally and then also physically. Another piece of that hunt, I'd been watching these ewes for probably an hour, and then was like, you know, I'm going to go get over there because they're on a ridge. I'm like, there might be a ram that comes up. And so I got within 100 yards of them. And this ram, who is definitely shootable, comes up, and I'm like, it's on. And I find this ponderosa pine, and it's got like this about 4.5, 5 feet up. It's got this nice little branch that comes out. It's only like 6 inches long, but like super solid, I thought. And I was like, put my gun on that. I'm on this ram. Take it off safety. I'm doing my 1, 2, 3, blow out, pull it. And as I'm pulling the trigger, like that branch breaks. I don't know if I like leaned in a little bit extra into that thing, but I'm on this steep hill and I fall over and the gun is discharged, which is like super safe at that point. But the scope hits me in the chin, almost knocks me out. I rolled down this hill like 4 or 5 times. And then like, you know, I'm like, what happened? Right.
Yeah.
And like the dust clears and I start doing my circles, you know, and I look for it until it gets dark that night. I looked the entire next day and I was devastated, to be totally honest, right? Like totally devastated. And I got to this spot where there were some bedding areas where I'd seen them in there before. No blood again. I'm checking all that area. And I kind of sat down and I was like, you know, I think I missed, you know, like I really got right with that happened. And I was like, but I need to sight in my gun. And I found this little tin can, like tuna can that must have been from another hunter, right? Like where I was, like there was nobody's hiking up where I was, like you're off trail, steep stuff. So I find this little tuna can and I look down and there's like this little like old snag and I put it in the crux of that snag, go back 100 yards. And I center punch that thing, you know, like at 100 yards. I'm like, all right, now, you know, I feel okay about my gun. You know, it's been through the rollover on the car. It's been through this fall. By the way, a Kimber Mountain Ascent, awesome gun with the Vortex scope on it. And then I killed my ram the next day, dude. And so the ups and the downs, both in elevation and like mental kind of that hunt, yes, pulling the trigger was awesome. You know, having that ram finally, you know, touching that ram and being like, oh my goodness, this thing is over. But I think the thing I will cherish would be just all that kind of, you know, the mental part of that and then the physical part of all of that. So that's what I would say is one of my most memorable hunts. I mean, we've both probably got tons of them, but like that one, since we've been talking about it, that's what pricked my brain. It's like, that's probably one of the most memorable ones I've had.
Have you ever had any, you're over in grizzly bear country. Have you had any major encounters at all?
You know, the grizzly, I haven't, not while hunting. You know, I think I've been around bears, like especially when we go hunt up in the Bob Marshall. We hunt up there, you know, pretty much once a year. And we're around bears a lot up there, but they're pretty smart, man. Like we'll have our horse camp and they'll, you know, be on the trail like 50 yards before camp, go around, you know, and then get back on and then behind us. But I was on the east side one time of the Bob and we were up the North Fork of the Sun and we were doing a scouting trip up there in the spring, and because I'd never been up there, and so we go across Gibson Reservoir. It's like 7 miles, and then we hike in 7 miles after that. So it's a pretty long day, right? Like you're pretty exhausted. And I had this dumb water filter. By the way, those water filters that you can actually just scoop in the water and then hang up in a tree, like that's my go-to now because you don't have to do anything. It's gravity fed and it's super fast. But I had one of those pumper ones, you know, that you hook onto your Nalgene, and I was like, wasn't working great, and so I had to like really look at it, and so I was just like zoned in, which you kind of never want to be when you're in the woods. Like, but I'm just like not aware of my surroundings, and I'm right on the edge of the Sun River, which was raging at that point because it's spring. My buddy comes up to me and he taps me on the shoulder and he goes, grizzly bear. And I look up and like at 60 yards, 70 yards, there's a grizzly bear, and he's looking right at me, dish face, like all like you can tell it's a grizzly bear right away. And so then we have this huge cut bank behind us and like from this river. And so like I'm like, oh, and for some reason I have my bear spray on me. Like usually when we get to camp, like I'm kind of like, all right, we're not gonna, you know, like surprise anything now, and so I can take it off, which is probably a dumb move. For those listening, just leave it on all the time. But like, so we start going up this cut bank, and that bear rushes, and he gets to the edge of the river, which is only probably like 20 yards wide, and he stops. But then there's like this little Douglas fir right there. And he just starts beating it up, man. And he's like standing up and like huffing, like he's not flapping his jaws. A lot of people say like they've heard him flap their jaws or whatever, but he's huffing like, ugh! And he's like, you can see his traps just bulging out of like his body. And he was fairly young bear. Like I think he was like, I'm guessing probably like 3 or 4 because he's away from mom. But but man, so he ended up not coming across the river. The river was high water, but he could have come across that thing in a second. But as he disappeared in the trees, he'd go upstream, then he'd come out like 50 yards, look at us, disappear again, do the same thing until we couldn't see him anymore. And, you know, we both have our own 2-man tents. And like that night, we kind of built this huge fire and looked at each other like we were both super exhausted, right? The adrenaline from that event, but like the 7 miles on the canoe, the 7 miles hiking. we were exhausted. So we just kind of looked at each other like, all right, it's time to go to bed. And woke up that next morning, you know how the sun wakes you up in the tent, and woke us up. And I was like, oh, I'm okay. And I unzipped my tent, and he was okay. And like, we were okay. But that's the closest I ever want to be to a grizzly bear, man. And I would probably say at the closest, he was probably like 40 yards. And mean, dude. Like, I like hunting around grizzly bears. I really do. It makes your awareness way different, right? Like when you hear things, or the things that you do, or just, I don't know, it's different. But holy cow, I never want to be that close ever again.
I bet not. I would say out in the wilderness, the closest I've been is probably around 100 yards, and it was heading uphill and away from me. So but even that.
So it was awesome, but it was awesome, right? Like,
it was great. But even then, you're like, don't turn. But
it's amazing how fast they can cover country too.
Oh, unbelievable! You know? And going uphill, it was running straight up, and I'm like, that's something I could barely walk up, much less run. But yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
So you as an average hunter, I know a lot of guys do like have some everyday carry things. Do you have any specific everyday carry things that you like to plug or anything?
Good question.
Or you're in the truck until you're ready to hunt. Is that?
I keep a lot. So I would say, I'd say maybe three things. First one is I bought a raft like 15 years ago, and probably as outdoor stuff, it's been the most enabling thing for me that I've ever had, right? Like it almost calls to me in the driveway, like, take me out. But it's also got me into places where I wouldn't have been able to go in the first place by floating down a river and getting into some sneaky weasel public land spot, So the raft has been amazing. I did just buy a John boat to go hunt ducks in up on up north of us. But so I'd say that, like, the raft in particular. Then I would go to, like, I got this Benchmade knife. I don't even know which one it is, but it is super rad, dude. It's fixed blade, and I just use it for everything. When I'm fishing, it's always on me. When I'm hunting, it's always on me. And so love that knife. And then the other thing that I just got was this deck system in my truck. I don't know if you know that deck system that has like drawers and stuff.
Yeah. I saw it on your Instagram, I guess, but yeah, those are.
Dude, it is super sick. It's super sick because you can it protects your stuff, right? Which is super awesome. But then it's like all there for you, and you can pull it out and like organize it. I'm not the most organized dude in the world, but have my stuff in there, and I can change it out, And so if it's fishing season, I got a couple rods in there, my net, and then have my anchor in there, which keeps that secure from my boat, so it's not flying around my truck if something happened. And then during hunting season, it's shotguns and rifles, and I love it, man. They are a corporate partner of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and so that's my caveat to this whole thing.
Yeah.
But that all said, best piece of gear I've probably gotten in the last decade. Like, it is absolutely amazing.
I don't know how many times in my life I've seen a fishing pole get snapped by a tailgate or something.
Totally.
There at the end of your fishing pole. And,
it keeps it secure, and and even keeps dust out too, right? We drive on a lot of dirt roads, you and I, and that dust, no matter what you do, it gets in everywhere. But they got these, I think they're gaskets or whatever on there that prevent the dust from coming in. And literally, I could go out to my truck right now and show you. I've been driving around on dirt roads all summer, and that stuff is clean. At least dust-wise, it's clean. Inside those cars.
Yeah, you talk about dirt roads. This last weekend, I also do some DJing, like wedding DJ. This last weekend, I had to go local rancher out south. I'd drive 35 miles of gravel just to go to this DJ gig, and it's out in a big, steel building or whatever. And by the time I got home, my whole car was just, an inch thick of dust through the whole thing.
There's nothing you can do about it either. There's nothing you can do about it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it can definitely get dusty heading down those roads for sure. So, you want to talk a little bit? I know, like you said, you do a lot of the stuff on the politics end, the Great American Outdoor Act. Explain that a little bit to people that might not know what it is and what happened. It was
totally
a big bipartisan thing that got passed through, isn't it?
It was amazing. Here in Montana, both senators voted for it. Congressman Gianforte voted for it as well, which they don't always see eye to eye. So it's something that brought people together. But the bill had really two main components, and the first one was the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Land and Water Conservation Fund's been around since 1964, takes money from offshore oil development in the Gulf of Mexico and puts that back to, I would say, conservation and access opportunities stateside. So it's been doing that ever since 1964. It was authorized at $900 million, which means it has to go through, this gets technical for a second, but it has to go through like this appropriations process in Congress. And so while $900 million was authorized and the money was there, they'd only appropriated it twice fully, right? And so at 900 million. So usually it was around 300 to 400 million. That's split between 50 states. And so, while we've utilized a lot of that money here in Montana, we weren't utilizing as much as we could. And just a little more about Land and Water Conservation Fund, like fishing access sites, like it's like 70% of the fishing access sites here in Montana are paid for by the Land and Water Conservation Fund.
Really?
It probably also paid for like a swimming pool or a park in Malta, to be totally honest. It's like smaller towns especially don't have a tax base necessarily to pay for some of those amenities. Like the Land and Water Conservation Fund has helped with that. And so it's been used in like 99% of the counties in America. So that was the first piece. So it was the idea of, instead of this, appropriated, that this is going to be dedicated funding, and so that we don't have to, it's always going to be there. It doesn't, and so it's $900 million. So that was the first piece. Second piece is that, our public lands, I think I even just read something in the paper that Yellowstone, even amongst COVID, is having its even a record year visitation again this year, right? And so you think about our national parks, you think about our Forest Service lands, think about Bureau of Land Management, Fish and Wildlife Service. All those places, people go out and visit, but we weren't necessarily feeding them. And so they had a $20 billion backlog in maintenance. Like, think about how big that number is.
Yeah.
And so the second part of this bill was $1.9 billion for 5 years. So ultimately $9.5 billion. Again, that comes from offshore oil and gas development, as well as new kind of stateside development. And that's, I guess it's not just oil and gas, it's also solar, any kind of energy development that basically would help pay for that. So those are the two big components. Again, Senator Daines, great champion, went to Trump and asked him and Senator Gardner from Colorado went to them back in March. And there's an election going on this year, and Senator Daines wants to do good for the people of Montana. And he's, he could have gone and talked about border stuff, could have gone there and talked about the economy, could have talked about, anything really. And he and Senator Gardner went there and said, we need the Land and Water Conservation Fund to get passed. And the president, who had just zeroed out that in his budget, 2 weeks later, he says, awesome, let's go for it. So this legislation, it passes out of the Senate, 73 to 25, out of the House, 310 to, I think it was 307 to 110. So huge bipartisan majorities, right? In which we do not, if you're following politics right now, people don't get along, right?
It's never been more split in my entire life as it is.
And that's what people say, right? And these are people that are way older than you and I that are looking at this. This is the most partisan they've ever seen it. And so for a vote to come together like that was pretty sweet. And I would say, and then ultimately signed by the president. And I would say there's two big, huge themes there. First of all, goes back to what I said earlier, is that public lands don't care if you're Republican, a Democrat, independent. They don't care how much money you have. They don't care who your parents are, who you know. They're open to everybody, everybody. And that's a straight fact. Yeah. And there's that piece. And then I also think that, the people spoke up, man. And a lot of people don't think that their voice counts anymore in this country. And, we here at BHA, I think just in the last month of that legislation, we generated 36,000 emails. We did over 6,000 phone calls out to Congress and really got people engaged in the process.
Oh, yeah.
But just engaging people in the process and people don't think their voice counts anymore. Well, yeah, it doesn't if you don't use it. And here's the direct line that people use their voices and people listen, and we got this thing over the finish line. Yeah. And, we've got, I think, Senator Daines is great, a great example. So Senator Daines, when we first started talking about the Land and Water Conservation Fund, was supportive, but really wanted to tweak a lot of the ways it was used. And we I would say as sportsman's community, not just BHA, we're no, man, this is working really well. Yeah. This is the way politics are supposed to work. This is the way, our elected officials are supposed to work. He listened and I was all right, now I'm going to go be a champion of this thing. So I just, and Senator Tester has been great throughout this process. And again, Gianforte signed on as well. But pretty awesome and historic, I would say, in our lifetimes. You know, think about $900 million a year for the rest of our lives, dude. Like that's pretty rad.
What's the argument against it then? I mean, what would it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'd say there'd there's probably two main ones. And the first one is that, hey, we already have all this public land. We can't take care of it already, right? That $20 billion in backlog that I talked about, that was the second part of like the thing. And I'm like, I get you on that piece, but also, you know, Congress, and this is, you know, through different, you know, leadership, like whether the Republicans control Congress or the Democrats, have been kind of systematically defunding our public lands agencies, right? And so the reason they have a $20 billion backlog is because we haven't been investing in them, right? Is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And so while that argument, I get it, you know, we're not making any, you know, like, well, I guess with Land and Water Conservation Fund, now we are. But like those public lands, like these opportunities, like, you know, think about like ranching communities like that you've been around, right? Like if you're like a lot of this, there's some of these bigger purchases, and ones I know about are more here in Western Montana, but or even I guess over by the Smith River. And is that you know, if you're a rancher and you want to keep your land the way it is, but you don't have, your kids aren't going to be, you know, they decided to go do something else.
Yeah.
Here's an opportunity to like make sure that piece of land is always going to be the way it is, right? Like going forward, you know, and it's not like anybody's forcing that rancher to do that, right? It's like their choice. So that gives that opportunity. And so who are we to deny, you know, that, I think, and then also that just, you know, creates more opportunities. When you talk about, I mean, it's hard to hear around Malta that you're having more pressure, right? Like, especially on public land.
And I mean, like around here, you know, we got with the APR and everything, it's, I mean, there's been some serious war around it. And I do see the rancher side of it for sure. I mean, I have a lot of friends that are ranchers. And the big issue there is that there's bigger money coming in from outside that they can't compete with. Like, say if I'm a rancher and I want to expand my land, and I want to buy Joe's house next door, it's really tough for me to do if I'm competing with that kind of money, and that's where a lot of that comes from. And I do.
Yeah, and I think
what they're saying.
I get it as well, you know, and I think it's yeah. I mean, there's so many different angles to just that piece that you just brought up, right? But I think, you know, there's opportunity to expand our public land opportunities, you know, that are available to everybody.
Well, exactly.
That create the economy you were talking about earlier. You know, I called it like Christmas for like 4 or 5 months, right? Like, you know, it's like, let's care and feed that. And so that was the first argument, was like, we can't take care of what we already got. And then the second one, which is a little bit more legitimate, I would say, is that like the coastal states, right? So this money is coming from the Gulf of Mexico, offshore oil development. They're like, we should be getting the lion's share of that money put back into stuff that we need done here. And I get that. And I worked on a campaign down on the Mississippi River, like where that delta has been disappearing for like the last 80 years. And it's like this awesome waterfowl spot, great for, you know, like fish kind of incubator. But as that marsh has died, like, you know, it's created a lot of problems. And so I can see, especially some of the Louisiana folks and Mississippi folks, like, we should be using this money here. I get that piece. But ultimately, you know, when they decided around the Land and Water Conservation Fund in '64, it was like, let's do this for the whole entire nation, and that's why it stood the test of time right now too.
I see. So they were hoping that the funds would stay closer locally there than spread it
Absolutely.
Across. Okay.
Absolutely.
I guess I do see their side of it there too. I mean, which we do, but I mean, that's a whole lot of money to spread around too. Which it is.
Like I mean, and you know, and I mean that the Mississippi River Delta, we're talking billions of dollars to fix that. And like when the Deepwater Horizon spill happened, I was working down there, which was super tragic, right? Like 18 people lose their lives, or maybe it was 19, but it was horrible, right?
Yeah.
But the fines that came from the Clean Water Act, which ended up being about $18 billion, like we helped pass some legislation that made sure that went back to conservation and restoration of that ecosystem versus going into new boats for the parish or like whatever that money could be used as.
Exactly.
And you know, and while that was, God, I'm trying to think when that legislation was passed, it's probably like 9 years ago. They're just starting to put like, you know, that to work down there in a lot of places, and it's gonna have huge impacts. So there is some money going down there, is what I'm trying to tell you, you know, at the tune of $18 billion. And so I think that helps buffer some of those complaints, I guess, a little bit.
Well, and normally the wheels of legislature seem to move pretty slow too. You know, many doors has to go through before the money actually shows up one way or another. You know, it does. It seems like you hear it all the time. Well, the government's sitting on this money, or they were a lot of this money and it hasn't went anywhere yet, which is true sometimes. But man, it takes a lot of votes to get it moving where it's supposed to go too.
Well, and I think like we got to stay vigilant, right? And I think like with like Land and Water Conservation Fund now that we're gonna have $900 million, now it's all about implementation, right? Let's make sure that this money goes where it should, and like that's up to us as the people. You talk about like kind of the slow nature. I've been working for like 20 years in this field. I've been talking about Land and Water Conservation Fund for 20 years, and we finally just got it passed like this year, right? And I think it's like probably like the election season that really helped ultimately get this over the finish line, as well as kind of like just the awareness of the people and their engagement. And some people aren't happy with that, and I'm like, man, like we'll take what we can get, and if like there's these outside pressures to like get stuff done, like let's use it. And I think if you look at a lot of legislation, it takes a long time for it to come. All of a sudden the dam breaks and it's done, right? And you're like, whoa, that just happened. And so we took advantage of that this time. I think everybody else did too, and we're super excited about it.
Well, and like we said before, that I don't know, especially this year, I don't know if I've ever lived a crazier year in my life. Between the politics and the COVID and everything else, with the COVID, how's that treated you in Missoula? How's it been there?
It's Missoula here. We've had it's been. Our kids. I think that was the biggest probably impact of us is that the kids' schools shut down.
Yeah.
Right? And so then you're trying to.
Shut down? Is that the schools are closed in Missoula?
They are. So we're just starting to open up again, and they are doing either 2 days full time and then the rest online, or like full online. Now the big caveat there is if you don't like the full immersion online actually has a program and like a platform that you're going to use.
Yeah.
The other piece doesn't, and so like I think we're going to probably go back into full online like pretty quickly, and so we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with our kids, dude. And I think that's like the besides like the inability to go hang out with people, in a lot of ways, and like for BHA, God, we've probably canceled over 200 events, including like our large rendezvous, which brings in 1,500 people, but also generates a bunch of funds for us. So we had to cancel that. We went to online and did it virtually, and to be honest, it was kind of rad. It was a great way to be able to connect with people. And then I think we learned some things, about how like doing stuff digitally and virtually. You and I are talking, across the airwaves right now. So
I think there's a lot of businesses realizing that the employees don't need to be slaves sitting in your office either in a lot of ways.
Totally.
For me, 3 years ago, I used to work in radio for about 10 years. And then 3 years ago, I cut off and started doing my own thing. I got the podcast, and then I run a cell phone repair shop out of my house, and I do graphic design. And then I'm also a promoter. I bring in like big comedy shows and rock concerts and different things, which that's the only part that's really been affected by COVID for me is I can't have any events. But as far as the cell phone repair, I think everybody's sitting at home staring at their screens, and I've got way busier. I'm like thanking my lucky stars I started what I did, because I've been safe from everybody. I'm at home. I made a drop box outside. They can drop their phones off, and I work on them.
It sounds like you're kind of an entrepreneur too, right? So like you've got all these different like diverse things going on, and so maybe the live events have kind of slowed down for you, which they have for everybody. And I think, by the way, when that dam breaks, just like we were talking about the legislation, it's going to be one huge party.
I think so too.
Yeah. But
I actually worked for Rockin' the Rivers in Three Forks there, and that's been canceled here. And that, that's huge. 10,000 people that normally get together can't. And
totally.
Some people, that's their one event of a year that they go to, so.
Yeah, and it's like the economy, right? But it's also this bringing people together and feeling like a community, and I think that's probably been like the one that we've concentrated on most is trying to like bring our people together, and because we are such a community, with BHA, while we're at, 40,000 members and have people all across the country and in North America, it's really those small events that bring people together that we're missing out on. And so how do you do that virtually? We did a turkey calling contest, this last spring. That was absolutely awesome. Yeah. The guy that won was from Montana, and he dressed up like the Tiger King, dude. And it was like a spitting image of him. And plus he was an awesome like mouth turkey caller. Like he was just amazing. And really? that was a lot of fun and interactive. You know, we didn't make any money off of that, but it was like bringing our community together.
That's
and
fun,
you
yeah.
know, it's super important. So, yeah, no, it's affected us. How about like schools? What's going on with you guys once you start again?
They're giving them a choice. They start next week, but they're giving them a choice of either go to school or learn from home and do the online thing in the program. But the only problem is and I think the plan is we're probably going to send the kids to the school just because this whole COVID thing doesn't seem to affect the children near as much as it does the adults. But they're trying all this distance learning. The only thing that really worries me about the whole thing is that they are requiring masks, not only just in the hallways, they're making it per teacher's discretion, whether they got to wear them all day or in their class or not. And that, I mean, like I said, my boy, he's a lot like me, where I don't think he likes to be told what to do all the time. I mean, I can see some problems maybe coming from that. My middle daughter, I think she'll probably be fine with it. And then I got one in preschool, and their preschool is going to be a go, but lots of protocols. They got to walk in the door and wash their hands right away.
Sure.
It's just so crazy to me because me growing up, I felt like school had a lot of rules anyway. And now we stack all of them on top of it, and that's where I kind of but everybody's got their own opinion on what we should and shouldn't do. And I don't think anybody actually has a concrete answer of what could or, none of us know. And
that's the scariest thing, right? And not even the scariest, but like that unknown piece and like not knowing.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, like, are they going to shut down the school for like in-person stuff? I don't, who knows, right? Nobody knows.
Well, and I just put a post on Facebook yesterday about like, they're going to allow school sports, but they're talking about maybe not having spectators and whatnot. Well, I was a high school wrestler, and at 2 different times I had pretty major injuries. Luckily, my dad was in the crowd there to be able to take me to the hospital type thing, But if you don't have any spectators, and let's say that our kids are out wrestling all the way in Shoto, which is quite a ways away from here, we find out the kid breaks his arm or something, I mean, that's part of the thing that scares me also about not being able to be there for sports. And I do feel bad for the kids, like let's say the top of the class of the athletes that got a chance to go on to the next level. How many of them missed out with spring track this year, and how many people missed out could have had a scholarship that might not be getting one now, that are now going to find a different job or whatever it is. It's crazy to me, but and actually here in the last couple of weeks, Malta was hit kind of hard with some COVID, but to my knowledge, I don't know everybody that's got sick. There hasn't been too many that got really that sick, other than
good.
They kind of got their way through it, and I've seen them around town now after it. But
good.
Yeah.
Are you a cat or a Grizz?
Grizz, for sure. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Buddies from high school actually used to play for him.
Who was that?
Lance Spencer.
Oh, yeah. I definitely recognize the name. Yeah. When they canceled the football season, dude.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
That's a huge deal, right? Like, that, like, all the money that is, and like the clout that brings the university, and just like, they've pumped it this spring, which I was really interesting. How those athletes going to like play football in the spring and then like turn around and play a whole nother season a couple of months later. But for that to happen, that this is affecting a lot of things.
Well, once again, the major injuries there. I mean, if somebody blows a knee in the spring, they're probably not going to be ready by fall, which is a scary thing for them. I mean, especially even at the college level, athletes that are looking to move on to the next level there too. That this whole thing's hindered a lot of people that way. But
totally,
I'm also a fan of the NFL. I'm a big Detroit Lions fan, which let's hope they
very depressing, but that's
terrible.
Okay.
I've been a fan since like 5th grade. I was a 49ers fan, and then Joe Montana left for the Chiefs, and I've seen Barry Sanders over on Thanksgiving, and I was like, I like that guy. I've been a Lions fan ever since, and man, it's been sad. But it's always next year is what it feels like to me. But yeah,
right.
Hopefully they get off without a hitch. It sounds like they're going to try and run the NFL season, but have
you watched? I mean, I'm not a big baseball guy, but I saw some highlights the other night, and then I watched some highlights of the NBA finals that are going on right now, which is totally different. Yeah. But they have these fake fans in the stands, dude, which is it's so weird. And like, I get it, probably like you're in these huge stadiums, right, as an athlete, and you're used to these big crowds. Which, I mean, when you were talking about your wrestling thing, I thought you were gonna like go into like all that energy that you build off of the crowd, right?
Yeah.
Like,
that also,
and how that just like changes things. It's like, how do these like fake noise, like fake crowd noises and like fake people in the stands, like it just feels weird.
Well, to me, football is like one of the biggest games of momentum anyway. I mean, if you feel the crowd turn, say right before or after halftime, you can feel it in between the team and everything. Makes me really wonder, like when you got a home game, like say they're playing at Washington Grizz Stadium and you don't have any fans, but your sound guy up there is cheering for the Grizz the whole time, pushing the button. You know, is that going to change the? I mean, let's hope it does for the good guys, but
right. It's.
I mean, are they going to have a guy up there booing the other team with their fake crowd noise?
Yeah, that home field advantage, right? Like, especially in Washington Grizzly Stadium. Come on, man. Like, that is like, I'd hate to be somebody else that has to come in and play there. And now it's almost like neutral, like ground, right? But yeah, the COVID thing, you know, I think that, again, like, I think one of the silver linings is that people are going outside more than they ever have right now. And, you know, whether that's like a walk around the block, or they're going to their local park, or they're going on some public lands or floating the river, like the solace that provides, right? And all this craziness, like I think people they might have, you know, taken it for granted a little bit before. And now they're like, holy cow, like this is like, man, this is making my head right. And I think that piece hopefully carries over. And so that, you know, again, that we care about, I mean, that's what I do. That's what I care most about. And so it's like, I feel like people are gaining more of an appreciation. And so I hope that that's one of the silver linings that comes out of that. Besides, you know, I think I mentioned this earlier. I think, you know, we're innovating like crazy over here and trying new things.
Exactly.
And, you know, when stuff gets back to quote unquote normal, whatever that's going to be, you know, that we have learned so much that we're not going to go back to the way we were before. Yes, we'll still continue to do a lot of in-person events, but this virtual stuff we're learning, you know, is pretty important for us, I guess, as an organization.
Well, I think one of the things is it's made families closer. I mean, some, I suppose it's probably driven apart from each other. We don't get along, but
fair. It's lots of babies and lots of divorces probably during COVID.
Yeah, right? And it does make it realize that you can do more of your work from home, you know. And my thoughts on the whole thing when it all hit, and they're locking down everything. We might be, who knows? They're talking martial law. They're, you know, anything. Who knows? In my head, I'm thinking, I'm really glad I live in the middle of nowhere in Montana, when all these riots and everything else is. I mean, shit's hitting the fan, and I got 2 acres of riverfront. Worst comes to worst, I can go shack up out there and fish for a living and eat the elk meat we got. You know, that's.
Yeah, how lucky are we? And I think that's like, I'd say 2 things. I mean, I live in Missoula, which is a lot bigger than Malta, but still felt very like lucky to live, you know, in a place. Live in Montana in general. And then that food security, you know, we talked about food before, and like feeding your family and like your son, like providing, like that security that you just mentioned. Like, man, if I have to, I'm going to be okay when it comes to food. I don't have to go rush to the grocery store and buy as much as I can off the shelves. You know, I got a lot of it right here. And I think that's another reason why, and I think you're going to probably see an increase of new hunters this fall, is because, you know, they're like, man, I want to kill my own meat.
Which I'm not down in LA, but you hear Rogan talking about it all the time, that the lines to the gun stores are around the block of people that were anti-gun before now are suddenly going, oh man, I need a gun as fast as I can get one, type of thing, because they're scared.
And it's probably for like 2 things, right? They're scared, but they also want to go like kill their own meat, right? Like, and so
to be able to
well, and I think, you know, with those gun sales too, like, you know, an excise tax that's on those, all that goes to, you know, there's like, what is it? It's like, I think it's like 8%, 10%. I should know that exactly, but that goes to like conservation that comes from like the sale of ammunition and the sale of like rifles, pistols, like, you know, whatever it is that's a gun, goes back to conservation through the Pittman-Robertson, you know, Act and the Sports Fish and Restoration Act. So to me, like, we'll see a big, hopefully, influx of money for conservation in addition to stuff we've already talked about today.
One thing that's I mean, it's scary and a good. I mean, depends on how you like it. Like me living in a small town here, it's one of those things. Yeah, I was on the Chamber of Commerce for 9 years and president until I termed out. But you know, you're hoping for more local business type of thing. Like you want the local clothing store to thrive, and you want the in-town stuff to thrive. But you also kind of want to keep your way of life, your small town life. So like this COVID hit, and you're getting people coming in. I mean, like the motels are packed. People are coming in trying to run away from wherever else they're at. Like we go out to Zortman quite a bit, which is the Little Rocky Mountains, and hike out there and do a lot of stuff out there. And actually, that's where Carol's from. Her dad still lives out there, but I've never seen more campers than what there is this year out there. I mean, just even in the public campground there, it's
Totally.
you're not there early, you're not getting a spot, which
Yep.
before you never had to really worry about that so much. But I mean, it's one of those give and take balances. I mean, like I said, the restaurants are busy, they're making money, but then also your cherished little land spot, you got to go a little deeper into the woods to get away from people than what you. I mean, we took a hike up the creek the other day, and it's a gold panning creek, and we hike up to this little waterfall and whatnot, and we're almost all the way in there, and there's a pickup from Florida with Florida plates on it, and I'm like, what? How in the heck? How did you
even find it? Yeah, how did you even find it?
I mean, there's a lot of people from Malta here that don't even know where the heck we're going up there.
Totally.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And there are people that are running. I talked to some of my friends that run a big motel there in Three Forks, and that's what they said. They said we've, like, as soon as it hit, we were fully booked with, and most of them were coming from California or vice versa, other places, that want to get the heck out. But then in another way, it's shining light on what a great state we have too, that.
Yeah, and I think that's like I'm a little nervous about Missoula in particular, right?
Oh,
right?
for sure, yeah.
There's a ton of people. I mean, the housing market is going crazy right now here.
Yeah.
Like, that has not even slowed down. In fact, it's increased during COVID because, again, like you talked about earlier, like if people are realizing they can work from home.
Yep.
And so, like, somebody that's been in Seattle or like wherever, one of these big cities where there's been, quite a bit of unrest and also just like unknowns.
Yeah.
And plus you're around a bunch of people that you and I don't want to do, and like we understand that lifestyle. And so they're looking at places to go, and Montana is an awesome place, and I think there's that push and pull, and then you feel that, and I have to be careful how I say this, but you and I grew up here, right? And so it's exactly. Now there's different views that are coming into Montana, right? That don't necessarily we share, right? And I just, we'll see how it all changes things, but it's hard to fault people, right? Like,
exactly.
And
if you're trying to save your own family, how do you fault somebody for wanting to bring their family away from danger?
And it's not, and what's either the unrest or like, it's like save them from the craziness that is those big cities, right?
Exactly.
Like, I've had chances to go out to Washington, D.C. and work out there. And I'm like, there is no way I want to raise my family out there,
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a time will tell, I will say.
I lived in Phoenix for college, and within like the first 6 months I was there, my pickup was stolen. I mean, I had all sorts of crime, and I called the cops on it, and 100 cars a night are stolen out of Phoenix. I mean, like, we didn't come look, no big deal. I'm like, this would be a manhunt if they were in Malta, like.
Totally. So, and it'd be over very quickly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. And I mean, even you've been seeing an influx of celebrities too to Montana, it seems like lately, especially like that Flathead Valley, Whitefish area. And the only thing about that, like I said, is it does raise the cost a lot of the times for your average local Montanan to go up to the ski resort that used to be $40 for a lift ticket. Now it's $200 a lift ticket type thing, And
I was just at Whitefish on Tuesday. We went up in Florida, the North Fork. We're working on here's a little teaser. We're working on a whiskey with a Spotted Bear distillery. It's going to be called Midnight Forest, which is that's an awesome story behind it. But we're up there, and like on a Tuesday during COVID, Whitefish, and that town is bumping.
Yeah. I've seen some Snapchats of my buddies from Whitefish and saying it's wild over there right now. But
it is. And, and things are going to change. I think that's what I was saying when we're stopped. Like, things are going to change. We just got to realize that. And hopefully we can, the reason a lot of those people are moving here is, one, to get away, but also because of the amenities that we have, right? And like public lands and waters in particular are a big piece of that, right? And, I mean, it's, hopefully they come with the same ethos that we have, they're growing up here.
Well, and you hope, my hopes are always like, they come in here with a certain kind of ideology, but after you live in Montana, maybe you do see the other side of things for a while too.
Totally.
I mean, I've got friends, even ones that have moved here from New York, and when they first moved here, they were pretty outcast. I mean, like, completely different views and everything. But after they've lived here for 5 years, now they're starting to see why we are the way we are here too. That.
Totally.
Which is, I mean, that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah.
And especially
we're probably not perfect either, though, right?
No, I'm far from it, man. That's why I work from home for myself. And like I said before, I hate being told what to do. So
Yeah.
it works good the way I'm at right now. But so do you
I will
guys?
say, go ahead. I was
Uh,
going to say that sign behind you, like, create something today, even if it sucks.
Yeah.
Like, so awesome, dude. That's like, just do, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I mean, like, because you're learning all the time when you're doing that, right?
Yeah.
If you create something that sucks, either like throw that away or you tweak it, right? But
Exactly.
like I love that mantra behind you because it's one I share, and I've been
I
staring
tell
at that
people
this
that
whole
all the
time.
time,
I had
and
to say something about them.
they're so afraid, like on that. There's so many people that are so afraid, like, well, what if I screw it up, or what? Well, okay, it's a simple screw up, and you learn from it. And the only way you're gonna learn is by screwing things up and getting to the point that you're good at it. You don't hardly anybody, unless you're just one of those freaky naturals, jumps into something and you're great at it right away. You got to screw some things up. So,
I mean, I'd say I've learned more almost when I do screw things up because I do not want to fail, right? And so, like, when I do screw something up, I'm like, oh, well, how can I make that better? And so I concentrate on it even more when something doesn't go my way, right?
mm-hmm. Well,
but I've been noticing that whole time and had to say something about it, dude. It's pretty rad.
Yeah, Carol got that for me, and I was like, this is the most perfect thing to hang in here. But
she knows you well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we got a little, which it's kind of messy over there. There's a bar there that we usually do the podcast from. And then I got drums. It's a music studio. But then also back in the back, I got weight bench now. Since my gym is closed down during COVID, we had to put up a squat rack and actually get a workout and whatnot in here too. So it's kind of
good for you.
It's a little room inside of my garage that I do about everything out of. So.
Well, it's the perfect man cave, dude, is what I look at it. Yeah.
So do you have any big hunting trips or anything planned coming up? I mean, we're just approaching hunting season now. You got anything fun that you're excited?
I was supposed to go to Alaska on Sunday, and we were gonna go up there. We were gonna chase around caribou, and just with all the unknowns with the kids around school and just like travel and everything, we canceled that trip. So kind of disappointed about that. My cousin texted me last night and knew that I wasn't going to Alaska. I was like, well, are we going to do the bob again this year? And so I think we're going to go into the bob marshal, that early rifle season.
Nice.
And then I got a cow tag, I got a doe tag, I got an antelope tag down southwest Montana. And so, dude, we're so lucky, like, with our general tags, like we could have like a ton of adventures. And so, my doe tag is it's like east of town, like half an hour, and I've killed does there the last 40 years in a row in like a half an hour. And so like that one feels like a grocery shopper, but no, it'll be a lot different this year because I won't be traveling at all across the country, which I don't really hunt big game out of Montana at all. I never have, besides like an alligator.
Right. I mean, there's really
exactly. And we could do, and you and I could try to hunt a different place every single year and never, with our general tags and never be able to like do it all in Montana. Right. And so it's like, I don't know. I've hunted birds a lot outside of Montana and fished a lot, but no, big game, dude. It's going to be local stuff, which I'm stoked about. How about you?
Well, other than, like I said, I didn't draw my local tag here, so I did get a general, but going out with my kid again, I think is
cool.
I'm going to go with him and his grandpa, I think, this time, and we'll see if we can get him another elk. And then other than that, we do a lot, like with the family. Like I said, we'd head out to Zormanid, not so much hunting, but we go out there and we take a lot of camping trips, different things. Like last year for my kid's birthday, we went up onto some Forest Service land and rented one of the cabins in the Little Belts up Drywall, which is some absolutely beautiful country up there too. How
cool are those Forest Service cabins? Those Forest Service cabins are amazing.
Yeah, that's one of those things. The night, like you go rent a lookout tower, and and if you don't book them early, they're tough to get. Especially like once this COVID hit, holy cow, they were all gone right away. But they are cool. That's the first one that time that I'd ever really went and got one. And you get there, and it's fully stocked. It's got enough beds for everybody. You're still in the wilderness. It was great. You didn't have to pack a tent.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I saw it on your Instagram. I think it was your little teepee tents. What are those that you got?
Yeah, so that's Seek Outside, another one of our corporate partners, but they're out of Colorado. They make them all. They're made in the USA right there in Colorado. But they're rad, man. And like, I think it's like I mean, I keep talking about the bob. Like we used to like bring in big wall tents, super heavy, takes multiple animals to bring them in.
Yep.
With these teepees, I mean, at 12 man, I don't know exact, weight is on that, but it is like a fraction of what that wall tent would be. And then you have we get this titanium stove and put them in there. And the titanium stove, the only thing I would say about those titanium stoves is that they're awesome. They heat it up really quick, but you got to put these little teeny pieces of wood in there. And so you and you can't really tamp it down. And so it'll go all night. And so if you want, I mean, it's super cold out, you better have good gear, as far as cold weather gear, because if you want to keep that fire going all night, you got to pretty much feed it all night. And that's my only downside of
it's anytime late September, October, Montana, the weather can go from 75, 80 degrees to 0 in a quick hurry. It's
totally. So having that stove is rad, right? And I think it's also great to be able to dry out gear, that, you can hang up stuff on the inside of the teepee, but seek outside, all sorts of different. One I haven't really tried is kind of it's a small one person, it's got one single pole in it and a couple stakes that you use. It's kind of like a bivvy a little bit, that I haven't used yet, but I'd like to, because then I could just put that in my backpack and be ready to roll.
So being in the position that you're in, do you get to try out a lot of different gear and things? Is that?
I mean, I would say yes. I mean that, and I would say yes. And it's definitely an advantage, but everybody also thinks that I hunt and fish all the time.
Yeah.
And it's I'm on the phone, I'm on front of the computer the majority of my time, and I'll get mine, but then also having these young kids, as I think as they get older, they enable us, right? It's easier to get out. But man, I don't get out enough. I can tell you that right now. And I don't know if there would be enough. I'm watching this Alone right now. I think it's that series on Netflix. They're up in the Arctic. They're out for 50 days by themselves. And I don't really want to do that, but God, in the fall, if it was, if I got 50 days during the fall where I could go out, I'd be a happy man.
Yeah.
And I haven't had that. I used to duck hunt a lot before work. I had a different job, and before working at lunch, just do little small things. And I just don't have that opportunity to do that anymore. It's just too crazy. So
yeah, that's good.
No, but go ahead.
Are you going to be, since you said you're going to keep the kids home, you think, or for homeschooling, are you going to have to be the one that their teacher or that?
So there's this online program, and there's so much unknown with that right now.
That's where we're at.
Is there actually going to be a teacher? Is there going to be programs, or is it going to be us teaching? So that's unknown. But my work's, it's demanding, but it's also flexible.
Yeah.
And so we could go out and duck hunt for an afternoon, or we could go out and go look for grouse, or we could go out and maybe hunt that doe. And so because they're all pretty fairly easy to do, and so we'll see. I don't know what that's going to look like yet. We're trying to we're figuring out these pods with other families, right? Where maybe the kids are at their house one day and then they're at our house the next, and so that we actually can get some work done. But it's the only thing I guess there is that everybody's going through the same thing, right? We're all trying to figure it out together right now, and so that's up in the air. But I'll try to take advantage of getting those kids outside as much as possible. I mean, like you said, when I asked you, you said, "Man, I'm really looking forward to getting my son out again."
Yeah.
The ability to one, teach them things, but also see things through their eyes is to me amazing, man. Amazing.
Well, and my son and I, we actually we also we skateboard quite a bit together too. Thanks to Jeff Emmett, we've got all the skate park. He put one here in Malta, and I've became friends with him, and now there's 34 around the state of Montana, and
so cool.
I might even be it might even be more than that now, but we can jump in the car, and anytime you go, it's throw your skateboard in where there's a stop everywhere that you want to go.
Totally.
And that's one thing during this COVID that you actually allowed to get outside and do, as opposed to being stuck in a building, or you can't go to the trampoline park or whatever the kids would want to do now. But yeah, that was my thoughts on sending the kids to school. I know they're going to miss their friends, and since I work from home, I'm thinking if I'm sitting in here working on $1,000 iPad. Oh, are you still there?
I am sorry. I don't know how I ignore these phone calls, so they don't do that. But Go ahead.
But anyway, yeah, if I'm sitting inside working on like $1,000 iPad and it's real tedious, and I got the girls jumping on the bed behind me or something, I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe they should go to school, but we're gonna try it for a little bit and see how it goes, I guess. And I guess that's what we're all trying to do, is figure it out. So
nobody knows what the right thing to do is, right?
Yeah.
And so we're all going to figure this out together, which I think that there's, as bad as this has been, like, it's affecting every single person, right? And so it's unifying in some ways too.
Have you had anybody in your immediate family that's caught the COVID or anything?
No, we've had a couple friends that like family members of theirs, like have gotten it, but like no, nothing immediate for us. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's been close all around. Well,
it has.
A group of the people that caught it here were all pretty young. I mean, like 20s, 30s, and like I said, a lot of them didn't have terrible symptoms, but yeah, it's one of those things. Do you the second you feel a cough, do you go get tested, or do you want to be part of the
totally?
That's
totally. Yeah, I think I was coming back.
Not killing you, then just quarantine yourself and get out. But
yeah, I usually travel 3 or 4 times a month, and last time I traveled was the first part of March, and I was at this North American Wildlife Conference, and 1,000 people there, and this is just when this stuff was starting to hit really hard, and came home like 2 days later, felt horrible, huge fever, like whatever. Somebody ends up testing positive at the conference and stuff, and I thought about going and getting tested, and I didn't, and there's some of that. Maybe I should have just addicted. No.
No.
I kind of quarantined myself and my family anyways, and like maybe I had it and I got some immunity, who knows? But yeah, it's definitely been a huge impact this year.
Well, that was me too. Like I said, work at the bar, and there had been, I guess, a few people that were known around, contact tracing or whatever, that were around me. And then, of course, there was a couple of weeks, and I actually had the time off from the bar. I had a fever, cough, but I knew I wasn't dying, so I didn't get tested either. And who knows? Maybe I do have the immunity to it now. And that's part of my thoughts too. Is like, do we send everybody around wearing these masks? Is it actually going to kill the damn thing, or are we going to just prolong for 4 years? Now we're going to keep getting COVID until finally everybody has immunity. Nobody knows. That's the worst part about it, is we don't know how. I mean, obviously it's something that's happening because I've talked to people that are sick, but how, I don't know how long. I mean, like, sure you can prevent it, but how long can we prevent it, type of thing?
I think we need. Hopefully they can come up with this vaccine pretty quick, right? Like I think and however fast that happens, and hope super safe and proven and all that kind of stuff. But I think once we have that things will go back to a little bit more normal, right? Like the flu vaccines, right? Like, that's changed a lot of things, and we'll see. I don't know. It's definitely the domination of the conversation.
Yeah.
What's that?
That's what scares me about that, is that it's rushed through so much. How well will it be tested? That kind of thing, Next time.
What was that fighter's name? That Russian fighter in Rocky, like that, Rocky fights that guy like twice.
Gosh, I can't.
I saw like a meme, right, of him with like his shirt off. Remember how like Rocky train, like in the barn, right? And this guy was like on all these like hyped up shit, and like there's a picture of him and like Russians after taking like the COVID vaccine, right? Like the Russian COVID vaccine. Like who knows what's in there, And like so hopefully it's gonna be all right, but we'll see.
I think one thing about it is it's made, like you said, made people get out more, and it's actually made America think about localizing more of their medicine than trying to spread it out so much and pray that you can ship it in from somewhere. So
totally. But, especially where you're at.
Oh, exactly. We actually, luckily, we have a pretty good hospital here. That it's fairly new.
Good.
We got some pretty good help around here and whatnot. But yeah. So before we get out of here, do you got anything else that's coming up as far as hunters and anglers go? I mean, is any legislation, anything that people should know about that we might not? Or
so this is an election cycle, so things are slowing down. Our big thing is coming up is September, and we call it Public Lands Month. And while it's kind of juxtaposition over, elk hunting in particular, which is not great as the timing. But there's Public Lands Day on September 26th, and then there's like that same day as National Hunting and Fishing Day. And so really we're just creating awareness like around, Public Lands Month is what we've called it for the last 3 years. And we'll be doing kind of like a Vote Public Lands and Waters campaign, which basically means like finding out where your politicians that you're going to be voting for sit on public lands issues. And so that's going to be a big piece. And then I would say, after the election and then coming into next Congress next year, there's tons of opportunities to build on kind of the momentum that we have this year, whether that's like place-based stuff like in the Boundary Waters or up in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge or Pebble, like Bristol Bay, which is Pebble Mine, or stuff here in Montana, like around the Blackfoot Clearwater Game, Stewardship Act, which is real close to me here in Missoula. There's some place-based stuff, and then there's also some opportunities. I talked about earlier how we've been kind of starving these agencies, for money, and that's why they're in such disrepair. That's why we have $20 billion in backlog. So I think, budgets are not that sexy, right? Like it's not like something we're like, oh, like let's go talk about all the little dollars here and there, but they're really important. And so I think there'll be opportunities to work on that after the first of the year. And there's a lot of unknowns. Is COVID going to be going on? Is we're going to have a new administration? Like who knows, right? And so once we hit January 1, I think we'll have a better idea. But right now, it's a lot of local stuff. Like we got a thing going on down in Arkansas right now where somebody's trying to sell 6,500 acres of public land, which doesn't sound like a lot to like you and I, but down there, especially for duck hunting and public land opportunities, like 6,500 acres is a big deal. So our chapter down there is just hustling on that piece. And so I think it's going to be much more, I tell you all that, I think it's going to be much more localized stuff than it is going to be federal stuff until probably the first of the year.
So do you, with your fishing and stuff, do you fly fish too, or do you?
I do. I grew up fly fishing. I've learned to throw spoons and throw junk and gear a little bit, but I grew up fly fishing, and I will tell you that there's hoppers are out and stuff right now, which is a lot of fun. Have these big fish, hit these big bugs up on top. Yeah. But my mind is already into hunting season, man, and so I'll still fish a couple more times, but no, my brain is on hunting now, and I'll start, with grouse, and then, elk in September, and then, get into the general season, and we'll go from there. So these nights, like for a little bit, we had those, like, I don't know if you had them, but like those like low 40s, even like high 30s. And it felt like the fall. And you're like, yes, here it comes. And then all of a sudden, we got these 95-degree days here in Missoula and 64 degrees at night. And I was like, oh, like fall is not here yet, but it's close. It's close.
I'm a huge fan. Fall's my favorite season myself. But
absolutely.
Do you bow hunt at all, or are you just rifle?
I don't. I need to get back into it. This is embarrassing, but I had a new peep sight put in my bow. I had a compound bow, and was shooting out in my backyard, shot like 4 times. Remember, like kind of there being like a little weird sound. And then the 5th time I shot it, the peep sight came off, and I'm wearing glasses now, but this was before I was wearing glasses. And that peep sight came back and hit me square between the eyes. Ooh. Big, huge, like blood, like hematoma, like right in the middle of my nose. And a lot of people talk about, like a gun blew up on them or something, being like a little gun shy. I'm a little bow shy. Like that's the part I'm kind of like a little embarrassed about. I got to get back into it, man. I'm like, I don't know. I may even go like trad bow, like recurve or something, because of all the bells and whistles aren't there. But no, Ty Stubblefield was on our staff, was a huge bow hunter, hunted elk all over the West, and I need to just get around him and like figure it out. But yeah, I'm a little embarrassed about that, but it's also another opportunity.
I thought like I said, with my kid drawing the rifle tags last year, then a good chance of it this year, I decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and put in for elk rifle up for the breaks, and I struck out. So, man, I should have just put in for bow and went for it. But I took quite a few.
And do you do bow hunt?
I did. I haven't bow hunted for quite a few years now. When I worked for the radio station, I worked there, and then I went to work bartending on the weekends. Well, it just kind of, between the full-time job there and the bartending, it took out any time. I mean, if you're going to actually bow hunt, you got to almost take a week, you can't, it's tough to just run out, throw an arrow at something. But now that I'm self-employed again, and which I have been for a couple years, I'm looking to get deep back into it. My brother bow hunts every year too, and we got a big crew of guys. A bunch of my friends that are on the podcast all the time do, and actually right outside the room, all my bow hunting stuff still hanging on the wall. But I'd taken a couple years off, and I'm in the same boat. I get back in it.
We both got to get back on the horse, right? We both got to get back on the horse. Yeah.
But anyway, if you ever make it over to Malta for anything, make sure you look me up.
Oh man, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the time today. I guess my closing thought for me, and I kind of talked about it with like the Great American Outdoors Act, but man, your voice counts in this country, but you got to use it like for it to count. And whether that's like at a local, like if they're doing like a 20-year plan at the CMR, or if there's something happening in the state legislature, there's something happening federally, like you have to be engaged, because if you are not, somebody else is there. And whether, however you think about some issue, you have to be involved, because you have to be able to get that out there. And so I would just, anybody that's listening to this, use your damn voice, and you're not going to win every single time. Absolutely. But boy, you're definitely not going to win if you're sitting on the sidelines. So stay engaged. And
there's so much truth to that too. Like even when I touched on the skate park here, the skate park wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for me willing to go sit through a city council meeting and bring it up and get it. Like starting at your local government, a lot of people are always asking me, well, man, it seems like you're getting a lot done. It seems like, well, you got to be willing to go sit there on a Tuesday night or whatever it is and sit through all the other junk that you don't care about to finally get to your issue and then present your stuff and try to move forward with it. But you're right.
Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Exactly. It really is. And there's well-moneyed interest, whatever that is, lobbyists here and there. But what we have is democracy is run by the people if the people want it to be that way, right? So we just, and none of what I would say, the last thing I would say is that, the embarrassment of riches that you and I have here in Montana and really across, United States is none of that happened by accident, right? There was people like the Roosevelts, and the Aldo Leopold, all these people, some of the people like we know the names of. Yeah. But a lot of we don't know the names of, right? Like thousands of people that we don't know the names of that made these little teeny decisions or got engaged, went to that city council meeting or went to this, legislative kind of hearing that made their voice known and is why we have what we have here in Montana in particular, right? And so to me, we're just at this point to do our part and then pass it on to that young 13-year-old and the rest of your kids and my kids, right? So they have something to engage in when they're our age, Yep.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks, man, for getting on here because it's been a good
man, cheers to you.
And like I said, if you're ever around Phillips County, get a hold of me and we'll come visit. Have lunch.
Awesome, dude. I don't skateboard. Like I grew up we didn't have I grew up on a dirt road, so I don't skateboard. Right. But we'll figure out something to do when I come.
Yeah. Well, I never skateboarded until after the city council meeting and after I got a hold of Jeff and we knew that the skate park was coming. That's when I was like, I better learn how to skateboard.
That's awesome, dude.
I was a freestyle motocross guy for years growing up. And I got to the point, which I'm just about 38 now, and I was getting to the point that it hurts falling from 30 feet out of the air and thought, I better figure something else out.
Who knew? Yeah.
No,
That's really cool, dude.
I like to fish, hunt. If you're ever around, I'll take you out to the cabin or something, show you the place on the Milk River.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, man. Really enjoyed the conversation today.
Yeah,
cheers to you.
Thanks, bud. Yep. We'll see you later.